First of all, I want to thank the senior senator from California, not just for his leadership on protecting the voting rights of all citizens in this country, but for his work as the California Secretary of State, where he gained a nationwide reputation for running free and fair elections. Senator Padilla, thank you so much for your work there, and thank you so much for your leadership here. I want to stand here in solidarity with my colleagues to push back, oppose, denounce President Trump's March 25 executive order, which claims to preserve the integrity of U.S. elections. It does no such thing. And by the way, the idea that a president who spent years denying the outcome of the election he lost gives him absolutely no credibility when he's speaking about his commitment to free and fair elections. Like my colleagues, all of us, I'm committed to safeguarding the security of our elections and working with anyone and everyone in the chamber to advance that objective. All of us revere the right of citizens to make the decision about who their leaders are. Unfortunately, many of our colleagues in the House, Republicans in the House, have fought to gut the election security grants our states depend on. And I say that usually these are not partisan issues on voting, but it's turning into that. And we're seeing a one-sided, one-party approach, particularly out of the House, that goes to the heart of our electoral process and the right of each of our citizens to make their decision and their vote be the one that counts. At the same time, despite the political violence at home and rising tensions abroad, the Trump administration has taken an axe to CISA. And as we know, that's the agency that works to curb emerging cybersecurity threats. And those threats are a threat to the election integrity that is so essential to the well-being of our democracy. The executive order makes an assumption that non-citizen voting is a problem. You know, the assertion that non-citizens are voting is alarming. Fortunately, it's not true. Also, federal law already bars non-citizens from voting in congressional and presidential elections. So this is not a question of whether there's some backdoor effort on the part of one party to allow non-citizens to vote. Can't be done. Illegal now. This executive order would not change that. Study after study has also shown that the rate of non-citizen voting is incredibly small, almost too small to measure, roughly 0.0001%, according to a reliable estimate. And obviously, that error is so small that it's hard to measure and would not have any material impact on our elections. And if you don't believe me, ask folks over at the Libertarian Cato Institute, very conservative organization. And they have labeled President Trump's claims about non-citizen voting as bogus. Their word, not mine. The order of the president also raises significant constitutional issues, Mr. President. The Constitution entrusts our states, and in the case of certain core rules of conduct, Congress, with the authority to regulate elections, not the executive. The executive order President Trump has signed flips that framework and purports to vest the president with expansive new powers that he does not have, not just him, but any chief executive. And it attempts to enact through executive fiat what the Trump administration seemingly believes it cannot achieve through the legislative process, through an act of Congress, namely Senate consideration of the SAVE Act, many provisions of which are contained in the president's executive order. And I ask my colleagues to join me in focusing our attention on the very real problems that confront our nation and are pushing back against the Trump administration's usurpation of the Senate's constitutional prerogatives. Mr. President, President Trump is attacking the right to vote with respect to dismantling of the Department of Justice organization of attorneys that are being punished for their efforts to protect that right to a vote. That organization within the Justice Department is being actively dismantled. And the President has currently used the Department of Justice as a tool to enact his, in my view, very extreme policy positions. And that includes the Civil Rights Division at the Department, whose mission includes protecting the right to vote. And according to press reports, all career supervisors in the voting rights section have been reassigned to other positions completely outside their areas of expertise. In other words, it's about destroying the Civil Rights Division. Assistant Attorney General Harmet Dillon, surely at the direction of the White House, is punishing career attorneys. This is outrageous. Also, reportedly, political appointees at the Department of Justice have ordered the dismissal of all active cases and the closing of all active investigations by the section. Our Civil Rights Division within the Department of Justice has a revered history for standing up for the rights of all citizens and their constitutional rights to be enforced and protected. And that brazen attack on the Civil Rights Division will leave it totally unable, as the President apparently prefers, to defend the democratic right of our citizens to vote. Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to oppose the President's executive order. I yield back.